The party was in full swing, a blur of bodies and bass thumps, when my friend, giggling and sloshed, dared me to do it. "Kiss Tom," she slurred, her arms sweeping dramatically towards him. The room, hot and pulsing with anticipation, seemed to hold its breath. My husband, Alex, stood nearby, beer in hand, an amused smile playing on his lips. Why not? I thought, buoyed by the drinks and the charged atmosphere. It was just a game, right? Tom was right there, looking as surprised as I felt, but there was a challenge in his eyes that I couldn't ignore. So I did it. I kissed Tom, feeling the buzz of the party fade into the background. It was brief, a mere moment, but it sent a jolt through me that I wasn't prepared for. Pulling back, I caught Alex's eye. He was laughing, the sound mingling with the music and the chatter, brushing it off as nothing more than a bit of harmless fun. But the air had shifted. There was a tension now, a crackle that hadn't been there before. The next day, nursing a hangover and a swirl of emotions, my phone buzzed. It was Tom. "Enjoyed that kiss more than I should have," his message read. My stomach did a flip. Replying was a bad idea, I knew that, but politeness won over. "It was just a dare," I typed back, trying to sound casual, dismissive. The conversation should have ended there, but it didn't. We started texting, at first about innocuous things, but it quickly escalated. The texts became the highlight of my day, a secret thrill that I looked forward to with a mix of guilt and excitement. "This is dangerous," a voice in my head warned, but I silenced it. The thrill of secrecy, the allure of something forbidden, kept me coming back for more. 3 weeks into this digital flirtation, Tom suggested we meet up, just as friends. I agreed, telling myself it was harmless. We chose a cozy cafe downtown, somewhere we wouldn't be seen. Sitting across from him, I felt a betrayal of my vice, yet I was drawn to him, captivated by the connection that seemed to have sprouted from that one impulsive kiss. Our meetings became more frequent, a secret we both guarded zealously. We were careful, always choosing places away from prying eyes. Each secret rendezvous added a layer of guilt to my conscience, but the excitement was like a drug. I was hooked. 2 months in, the lies began. Working late, I'd tell Alex, my voice steady over the phone, hiding the tremor of guilt that ran through me. I hated the deception, the way my heart raced for all the wrong reasons. But by then, I was too deep into this affair, caught in the web of my own making. Each step down this path felt like betrayal, yet I couldn't stop. The guilt was overwhelming, a constant shadow that darkened every stolen moment with Tom. But the intensity of our connection, the thrill of the secret, made it impossible to pull away. I was trapped in a cycle of desire and remorse, unable to see a way out without losing everything I held dear. Please take a moment to like and subscribe. It helps us create more content you love. Thank you for your support. In the quiet of a secluded park, with autumn leaves whispering secrets to each other, Tom slipped a bracelet onto my wrist. It was delicate, beautiful, a tangible symbol of our forbidden connection. "Happy birthday," he murmured, his eyes locked on mine. I tucked it under my sleeve, a hidden badge of my betrayal. That evening, curled up on the couch next to Alex, my sleeve rolled up, exposing the bracelet. "That's new," Alex noted, his tone casual but curious. Panic fluttered in my chest. "Oh, this? Just a little something from a coworker." I lied smoothly, the weight of my deceit pressing down on me. Alex smiled, satisfied with the explanation, but the guilt gnawed at me, a relentless reminder of the double life I was leading. Tom's texts started coming in more frequently after that, each message a leash tightening around my neck. "Where are you? Who are you with?" His possessiveness was suffocating, a stark contrast to the exciting thrill it once was. Caught between Alex's unwavering trust and Tom's escalating demands, I felt like I was being pulled apart. During a weekend getaway, amidst the serene backdrop of a lakeside cabin, Alex, with love and hope in his eyes, suggested we renew our vows. "I love you more than ever," he said, his sincerity piercing through the fog of my guilt. Overwhelmed by a mix of love for him and desperation over the mess I'd gotten myself into, I whispered, yes, clinging to the idea of redemption, of wiping the slate clean. But reality crashed back the next day. I met Tom, intending to end things, to sever the ties that bound us in secrecy. "I can't do this anymore," I confessed, the words heavy with regret. Tom's reaction was visceral, a mix of anger and desperation. "I can't imagine life without you," he said, his refusal to let go igniting a fear in me I hadn't anticipated. The situation escalated when Tom showed up unannounced at a family dinner. Pretending to be in the neighborhood was his thin excuse, but the warning in his gaze was clear as he nodded towards me, a silent threat veiled behind a polite smile. Alex, ever the gracious host, invited him to join us, oblivious to the tension that crackled in the air like a charged storm waiting to break. Sitting at that table, with Alex on one side and Tom on the other, I felt like a fraud, torn between two worlds that could never reconcile. The evening passed in a blur of forced smiles and strained conversation, my heart racing with the fear of my secret life being exposed. Every glance from Tom was a reminder of the precarious edge I was teetering on, a single misstep away from losing everything I held dear. Dinner was a disaster waiting to happen, a ticking time bomb under the guise of a family meal. My phone, tucked away in my purse, buzzed relentlessly, each vibration a sharp reminder of the mess I was in. Tom's texts were like rapid fire, impossible to ignore. I could feel Alex's eyes on me, the weight of his gaze heavy with concern. "You okay?" "You seem off," he asked, his voice laced with worry. I plastered on a smile, my go-to defense mechanism. "Yeah, just tired," I lied, feeling the familiar sting of guilt. But Tom, he wasn't just a problem, he was a hurricane ready to make landfall. His demands escalated quickly, from possessive texts to outright threats. "Tell him, or I will," he warned one night, his voice cold over the phone. The threat hung in the air, heavy and ominous. I felt cornered, trapped by my own choices. Agreeing to meet him seemed like the only way out, a desperate attempt to salvage what little control I had left. "We'll talk tomorrow," I said, my voice barely a whisper, a plan forming in my mind to end this nightmare amicably. The meeting was tense, a high-stakes game of cat and mouse. I poured my heart out, admitting to the affair and my desperate desire to end it, to go back to some semblance of normalcy. Unbeknownst to me, Tom recorded every word, a digital dagger waiting to be plunged into my life. The bomb dropped a week later. Alex received the email, an anonymous gift wrapped in betrayal. The recording laid everything bare, my words echoing in the silence that followed. He confronted me, the pain and betrayal etched deeply into his face. "Is this true?" His voice cracked, the sound of a heart breaking. I could do nothing but confess, the truth spilling out in a torrent of regret. "I'm so sorry," I said, a plea for the forgiveness I knew I didn't deserve. Forgiveness, however, was a bridge too far. The next day, Alex packed his bags, each item a testament to the life we had built together. The house, once filled with laughter and love, felt like a mausoleum, a monument to my mistakes. He left without a backward glance, the finality of his departure a sharp pain that seemed to cleave my heart in two. Left alone in the echoing emptiness of our home, I was confronted with the reality of my actions. The silence was suffocating, a constant reminder of the love I have squandered. I wandered through the rooms, a ghost haunted by memories of happier times, each corner a sharp jab of regret. The magnitude of my loss was overwhelming, a tidal wave that threatened to drag me under. I had gambled everything on a fleeting thrill and lost more than I ever imagined possible. The house, now a prison of my own making, stood as a stark reminder of the cost of my betrayal. The silence was the first thing that hit me, a void where Alex's voice used to be. My attempts to reach out, to explain, to apologize, all met with a digital wall. Blocked on every platform, every message undelivered, every call unanswered. The finality of that silence was a punch to the gut, a clear sign that Alex had closed the door on us, on me, for good. Word got around fast. Our circle of friends, once a source of joy, became couriers of the grim news. Alex had filed for divorce, citing my infidelity as the reason. The whispers of my mistakes echoed in my ears, a constant buzz of judgment. Facing them, facing the reality of what I'd done, was like standing naked in a hall of mirrors, my faults reflected back at me from every angle. The divorce proceedings were a blur, a procession of cold, hard facts laid bare for legal scrutiny. Alex came prepared, evidence in hand, a catalog of my betrayal. My lawyer's advice was to settle, to avoid dragging out the inevitable. "It's the best you can do under the circumstances," he said, his voice void of the warmth we once shared in our dealings. The settlement was a landslide loss for me. The house, our house, slipped through my fingers, along with the lion's share of everything we'd built together. My financial security, once a solid ground beneath my feet, crumbled into dust. Tom, ever the opportunist, stepped in with offers of support, a shoulder to lean on. But the foundation of our relationship, if it could even be called that, was rotten, built on lies and deceit. His comfort felt hollow, a poor substitute for what I'd lost. The thrill of our secret, now out in the open, had lost its luster, leaving behind a bitter aftertaste of reality. Moving day came, and with it, a tangible sign of my downfall. From our spacious home to a cramped apartment, the downgrade was more than just physical, it was a stark representation of my new reality. The walls of the apartment closed in on me, a constant reminder of the life I'd squandered. Then came the photos, digital glimpses into the life Alex was rebuilding without me. There he was, smiling, surrounded by friends, moving on. Each image was a dagger, twisting in the wound of my betrayal. The knowledge that I was the architect of his pain, and now my own, was a burden too heavy to bear. Tom's presence, once a source of excitement, became a reminder of my folly. Our conversations, once filled with electric anticipation, now felt strained, the silences between us loaded with unspoken regrets. The distance grew, not just physically but emotionally, until one day, the inevitable happened. Tom's messages stopped coming. The thrill, the secrecy, the affair, it all faded into the harsh light of day, leaving me to reckon with the ruins of the life I'd chosen. Left alone with my thoughts, I realized the cost of my actions. Not just the loss of my marriage, my home, my financial security, but the loss of myself. In chasing what I thought I wanted, I'd lost what truly mattered. And as I sat in my cramped apartment, a shell of the life I once knew, the weight of my choices settled around me, a constant companion in my new, diminished reality. The buzz around Alex's promotion reached me through the grapevine, a bittersweet symphony of what could have been. Our mutual friends, in hushed tones over coffee, painted a picture of his success, his ascent in the corporate world, a world I was no longer a part of. "He's doing really well for himself," they said, their words a reminder of the life I had lost. The news stung, not because of jealousy, but because of the realization that Alex's life was flourishing without me. Tom and I, on the other hand, were unraveling at the seams. What started as small disagreements ballooned into full-blown arguments, the trivialities of daily life exposing the fragility of our connection. Without the adrenaline of secrecy fueling our relationship, we were just two people, starkly incompatible. "This isn't working," Tom declared after a particularly petty argument. The truth of his words echoed in the hollows of my heart. The arrival of the final divorce papers felt like a physical blow, a concrete ending to the chapters of my life that had Alex at their center. My hands trembled as I signed them, each stroke of the pen severing the ties that bound us. It was more than just paperwork, it was an admission of my failure, the closing of a door on a part of my life that I would never get back. Reaching out to old friends seemed like a logical step towards rebuilding my life, but the reception was colder than I expected. "I'm really busy this week," became a common refrain, their words polite, but their intentions clear. The choices I had made had not only cost me my marriage, but had also fractured friendships I had thought were unbreakable. The isolation was a harsh penalty, the cost of my actions more extensive than I had anticipated. Work, once a refuge from the chaos of my personal life, became another battlefield. My concentration was shot, my performance lackluster. "We need to see some improvement," my boss warned, his disappointment clear. The professional persona I had carefully built over the years was crumbling, just like everything else in my life. Seeing Alex at a mutual friend's wedding was a test of endurance. He was polite, distant, a stranger wearing a familiar face. The space between us was more than just physical, it was a chasm wrought by betrayal, a gap I knew I could never bridge again. The sight of him, happy and unburdened by our past, was a reminder of what I had thrown away. Tom's departure from my life was the final blow, a quiet exit that left a gaping hole in its wake. "I need to focus on myself," he said, his words a mirror of my own thoughts. Only too late. The loneliness that followed was a constant companion, a reminder of the cost of my choices. The realization that I had isolated myself from the people who once cared about me was a slow, painful awakening. The loneliness wasn't just a byproduct of my failed relationships, it was a reflection of the choices I had made, the paths I had chosen. My actions had set me adrift, a solitary figure navigating the consequences of decisions that had seemed so inconsequential at the time. The struggle with loneliness was not just about missing the people from my past, it was about coming to terms with the fact that I had alienated myself, that I was the architect of my own solitude. Life's got a twisted sense of humor, doesn't it? Here I am, clocking out from my day job only to head straight to my night gig. The settlement might as well have come with a ball and chain attached, dragging down every step I take with the heavy reminder of my financial woes. My days blend into a monotonous cycle of work, sleep, repeat. The word, exhausting, doesn't even begin to cover it. Then, as if on cue for a reality check, I bump into Alex at a local cafe. It's one of those slow motion moments where you see the other person and everything around you just blurs. He's polite, offering a nod and a, "How are you?" That's so formal it stings. The air between us is charged with an unspoken acknowledgement of our past and the vast gulf of our present. His demeanor leaves no room for doubt. What we had is well and truly over. As if seeing Alex wasn't a sharp enough reminder of my new reality, whispers of his new relationship find their way to me. It's like a sucker punch to the gut, knocking the wind right out of me. Knowing he's moved on, finding happiness with someone else, it's a stark contrast to the loneliness that's become my constant companion. The divorce, my ill-thought-out adventure with Tom, it's all come at a cost, and not just emotionally. My savings account is a shadow of its former self, bled dry by endless legal bills. Every penny I earn is accounted for before it even warms my bank account. Budgeting isn't just a practice now, it's survival. Night after night, I'm haunted by the ghosts of my decisions. Sleep becomes a battleground where remorse and what ifs wage war. I toss and turn, replaying moments, words, choices. The nights are long, and the dawn brings no relief, just the start of another grueling day. In a moment of loneliness or maybe desperation, I try dipping my toes back into the dating pool. But it's a disaster. Each date feels like a glaring spotlight on what I've lost, on what could have been. No one measures up to the memory of Alex, to the life we shared. It's not their fault, really. My heart's just not in it, still tangled up in a past I can't reclaim. Then, an invitation arrives. A reunion event, a chance to reconnect with old friends, to maybe stitch back some semblance of social life. But the thought of facing them, of seeing Alex there, happy and in love, it's more than I can bear. The fear of judgment, of pitying looks, it's paralyzing. So, I decide not to go. It's easier, safer, to stay in my cocoon of solitude than to face the music. This chapter of my life, it's not one I ever envisioned. It's as if I'm living someone else's story, watching from the sidelines as my world continues to unravel. The lessons I'm learning are hard, served with a side of loneliness and regret. But here I am, trying to pick up the pieces, trying to find a way forward when every step feels like I'm moving against the current. Just when I thought I'd hit rock bottom, life showed me there's a basement. My struggles at work, a mix of distraction and disinterest, finally caught up with me. "We're going to have to move you to a less critical role," my boss said, his words a polite euphemism for a demotion. The financial sting of it was immediate, another blow in a series of defeats. It felt like being kicked while I was already down, struggling to find my footing in a life that no longer made sense. The demotion forced my hand further, pushing me to downsize yet again. I found myself packing boxes, each item a reminder of the life I once lived, now reduced to memories packed away in cardboard. The new apartment was smaller, the walls closing in on me, a physical manifestation of my shrinking world. The move was a silent testament to the spiral of loss that had become my existence. Then, as if to rub salt in the wound, I saw Tom. There he was, hand in hand with someone new, looking happy, unburdened by the past we shared. Surprisingly, the sight didn't sting as I thought it would. Instead, it served as a stark reminder of how far I'd fallen from the person I used to be, a reflection of the choices that led me here. In a desperate attempt to find some semblance of normalcy, I reached out to mutual friends I shared with Alex, hoping to mend fences, to reconnect with a part of my life that felt like it belonged to another lifetime. But the encounters were awkward, strained. The unspoken judgments hung heavy between us, a clear sign that too much had changed, that the bridges back to my old life were too charred to cross. And then, as if I needed any more confirmation of the distance between my past and my present, I saw it on social media. Alex was engaged. The news hit me like a physical blow, a final nail in the coffin of what we once had. There he was, smiling, a look of happiness that I hadn't seen in a long time, not even when we were together. It was the closure I never knew I needed, a painful but clear sign that it was truly over. Now, here I am, sitting alone in this cramped apartment that feels more like a cell than a home. The walls are bare, the space filled with the echo of my regrets. It's in this solitude that the reality of my situation truly sinks in. I've lost everything: my husband, my home, the life we built together, and somewhere along the way, I lost myself too. The cost of a fleeting thrill, a moment of recklessness, has been everything. The silence of the apartment is deafening, a constant reminder of the isolation that has become my world. It's in this quiet that I'm forced to confront the consequences of my actions, to face the wreckage of choices made in moments of weakness. The realization is a bitter pill to swallow, the understanding that I am solely responsible for the ruins around me. This is the bed I've made, a bed of thorns, and lying in it is my penance. The journey here, paved with mistakes and missteps, is mine alone. And as I sit in the dim light of my new reality, I can't help but wonder if this is it, if this is where my story ends, or if, somehow, there's a way to rebuild from the ashes of a life I set ablaze. The weight of regret is a heavy chain, but perhaps, in its links, there's a lesson to be learned, a path to redemption that starts with facing the truth of who I've become. All right, folks, gather around and let me hit you with a story that'll make your jaws drop. It all started when my gal, Lisa, decided to throw a curveball into our otherwise smooth relationship. We were knee-deep in wedding plans, right? I mean, you couldn't find a happier couple even if you tried. So picture this. We're browsing through flower arrangements, tasting cakes like it's a dessert Olympics, and discussing color schemes for the umpteenth time. We were basically pros at wedding planning, and our big day was just around the corner. I was stoked. But then, out of the friggin' blue, Lisa pulls me aside, looking all serious and stuff. She says, "Hey, honey, I've got an idea." And I'm thinking, sure, why not? Maybe she's got some fancy honeymoon destination in mind. But oh no, it was way crazier than that. She drops the bomb right there in the middle of the bridal boutique. She suggests we take a temporary split. I swear my jaw hit the floor so hard it could have cracked tiles. Temporary split? Like what the heck does that even mean? I'm standing there trying to process it all, and Lisa's explaining herself. She's like, "I think we should take some time apart, just to be sure we're meant for each other." Meant for each other? I thought we'd covered that territory already. We were more meant for each other than peanut butter and jelly, for crying out loud. But she had this look in her eyes, a mix of determination and doubt, and I knew she was serious. So, being the reasonable guy that I am, most of the time, I said, "All right, babe, if that's what you need, we can do it." I mean, what else could I say? You can't force someone to stay if they want some solo time, right? So, there it was, our wedding plans thrown into chaos, and I was about to embark on the most confusing journey of my life. Little did I know, this was just the tip of the iceberg, my friends. Buckle up, 'cause it's gonna be a wild ride. So there I was, trying to wrap my head around this bizarre idea of a temporary split that Lisa had dropped on me. I mean, seriously, who does that in the middle of planning a wedding? She started explaining herself, like she'd become some kind of relationship guru overnight. She said she wanted to make sure we were the real deal, that our love was as solid as a rock, and that we were meant to be together. I'm thinking, ain't that what we've been doing all this time? Wedding planning and all that jazz? But no, she needed more than that. She needed time apart to, figure things out. I mean, sure, couples have their doubts sometimes, but this was like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube while blindfolded and wearing mittens. It just didn't make sense, so what could I do? I reluctantly agreed to this temporary split nonsense, thinking it'd be a blip on the radar. I mean, we'd been together for years, and she was my rock, my partner in crime. I couldn't imagine my life without her. But I also couldn't stand in the way of whatever this journey was supposed to be. I thought maybe she'd take a weekend getaway with her girlfriends, or we'd have a little breather while still keeping in touch. But oh no, it was more complicated than that. She packed her bags and moved in with her sister in a different city. We're talking about hundreds of miles away. The whole thing felt like a bad rom-com plot, where the couple takes a break and explores their personal growth before getting back together stronger than ever. But let me tell you, real life ain't no Hollywood movie. I watched her leave, feeling like someone had sucker punched me right in the gut. I had no idea what to expect, but one thing was for sure. This temporary split was just the beginning of a roller coaster ride I never signed up for. So grab a seat, my friends, because this story is far from over. Hey there, dear readers. I hope you're as hooked on this journey as I was living it. Before we dive into the next chapter of this roller coaster story, I've got a small favor to ask. If you're enjoying this tale of love, adventure, and unexpected twists, how about showing some love? Hit that like button to let me know you're on board. It's a simple click for you, but it means the world to me. It's like a virtual high five telling me to keep the stories coming. And hey, why stop there? Go ahead and hit subscribe too. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming up next. Subscribing will keep you in the loop, so you're always the first to know when a new chapter drops. Plus, it's a great way to support this storyteller on his quest to keep you entertained. So take a quick second to like and subscribe. Huh? Awesome. Now buckle up and let's jump back into the story. The next chapter's waiting, and trust me, you don't want to miss a beat of what's coming up next. A couple of weeks into this mind-boggling temporary split with Lisa, something fishy was brewing in the background, and I was about to become the detective in my own twisted mystery story. So picture this. I'm trying to keep my cool, going about my daily routine like everything's hunky-dory. But then, out of the blue, I start hearing whispers. Gossipy, cryptic whispers about someone named Mark. Who the heck was Mark, you ask? Well, I was wondering the same thing. Apparently, Mark was Lisa's new friend. Yeah, you heard me right, a friend. But let me tell you, my spidey senses were tingling like crazy. I'd never heard of this guy before, and it didn't sit right with me. Suspicion started creeping in like a nosy neighbor peeking through their blinds. First, it was a casual mention from Lisa's sister, saying something like, "Oh, Mark stopped by today." I thought nothing of it, right? People have friends, no big deal. But then it became a recurring theme. Mark and I went for coffee, or Mark helped me with some stuff. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I mean, who is this Mark dude, and why was he suddenly such a big part of Lisa's life? It felt like I was in some sort of alternate universe, where Mark was the new star of the show, and I was just an extra in the background. I tried to stay calm, not jump to conclusions, but it was driving me nuts. I couldn't help but think, is this what our temporary split was really about? Was she seeing someone else already? I had to know more. I couldn't just sit there twiddling my thumbs while Mark got cozy in my territory. So I did what any sane person would do. I turned into a full-fledged social media stalker. I started checking Lisa's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, you name it, trying to find any traces of this Mark character. And let me tell you, my friends, what I found only made this whole situation even more bizarre. Mark wasn't just some random guy. He was popping up in her photos, comments, and likes like he was auditioning for a leading role in her life. I had a million questions, and not a single answer. Who was Mark? What was his deal? And most importantly, what the heck was going on in Lisa's head? It was like peeling back the layers of a very confusing onion. And I was nowhere near the core of this mystery. But hey, they say curiosity killed the cat, right? Well, this cat was about to dive headfirst into a rabbit hole of unexpected twists and turns, and I couldn't have imagined where it would lead me next. So grab your magnifying glasses, my friends, because we're just getting started in this baffling journey. So there I was, stuck in this mind-boggling maze of a temporary split with Lisa, trying to make sense of this whole Mark situation. But I wasn't about to sit idly by while my relationship was spiraling into chaos. Curiosity, my dear friends, got the best of me. I mean, who wouldn't be curious in my shoes, right? So one day, I decided to channel my inner Sherlock Holmes. I grabbed my trusty laptop, opened up Google, and started typing in Mark Lisa friend. And boom, there it was, the rabbit hole I was looking for. Mark, it turns out, was a real looker. I mean, the dude was handsome enough to make a peacock jealous. And here's the kicker, He and Lisa had been spending more time together than I'd ever spent binge watching Netflix. My heart sank like it was on a one-way trip to the ocean floor. I couldn't believe my eyes as I scrolled through their pictures together. There they were, smiling like they'd won the lottery, taking selfies like they were auditioning for a shampoo commercial. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of jealousy. After all, this was the girl I thought I was gonna marry, and now she was playing happy families with Mr. Tall, dark, and handsome. But I needed more info, right? I had to dig deeper, get to the bottom of this tangled mess. So I started checking out Mark's social media profiles. I'm talking Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, you name it. I became a certified Mark stalker. And let me tell you, the more I dug, the weirder it got. Turns out, Mark was into all these deep philosophical quotes and artsy stuff. He had this whole life is a journey vibe going on, and I couldn't help but roll my eyes. It was like he was auditioning for the lead role in a pretentious indie movie. But the real kicker was when I stumbled upon a post where Mark was talking about finding his muse, or some crap like that. And guess who his muse was? You got it, my ex, Lisa. I couldn't believe my eyes. The dude had turned my girl into his artistic inspiration, or some nonsense. So there I was, sitting in front of my laptop, feeling like I'd just walked into a parallel universe. My girl had become someone else's muse while I was busy playing detective. It was like something out of a bizarre soap opera. But I still had no idea what was really going on. Why had Lisa gone from planning our wedding to becoming this Mark guy's muse? And where did that leave me in this crazy love triangle? The only thing I knew for sure was that things were about to get a whole lot messier. And I was in way over my head. So stay tuned, my friends, because this roller coaster ride was just getting started. So after weeks of snooping around and turning into a full-blown detective, I decided it was time to face the music. I couldn't just sit around and watch my girl, Lisa, turn into some other dude's muse without a fight. I mustered up all the courage I had left, which wasn't much, to be honest. And I decided to confront Lisa about this Mark character. I figured it was high time we had a heart-to-heart about the whole mess. After all, we'd been through thick and thin together, and we owed each other that much. So there I am, sitting Lisa down, trying to keep my cool while my heart's racing faster than a NASCAR car. I'm like, Lisa, we need to talk. And she's looking all nervous, like she's about to face a firing squad or something. I didn't beat around the bush. I went straight for the jugular. I asked her about Mark, about the whole Muse thing, and about why the heck she'd turned our relationship into something straight out of a cheesy soap opera. And you won't believe what she said next, my friends. She dropped the bombshell of all bombshells. Lisa, my girl, the one I thought I was going to marry, admitted that she'd developed feelings for Mark during our little temporary split escapade. I swear it was like a punch to the gut, a knockout blow from out of nowhere. I couldn't believe my ears. My world crumbled faster than a sandcastle at high tide. I was left sitting there, feeling like the protagonist in some melodramatic telenovela. Lisa tried to explain herself, saying that it was all so unexpected, that she never meant for it to happen. But the damage was done, my friends. She'd fallen for Mark, and there was no going back. I didn't know what to say, what to do. It was like my entire world had been turned upside down in the blink of an eye. The wedding plans, the future we'd envisioned together, it all crumbled to dust. I had a mix of emotions raging inside me. Anger, sadness, and this weird feeling of betrayal. I mean, we'd been through thick and thin together, and now she was telling me she'd fallen for another guy during our break. As I sat there, listening to Lisa's words, I couldn't help but wonder if I'd been living in some kind of fairy tale, where love conquers all and happily ever is a guarantee. But real life, my friends, real life can be a real kick in the gut sometimes. And just like that, my story took an unexpected twist that I never saw coming. Lisa and I decided to call off the wedding. It was like our love story had turned into a Shakespearean tragedy, and I was left wondering what the heck had happened to the life I thought I was gonna have. But little did I know, this twist was just the beginning of a roller coaster ride that would take me to places I never imagined. So, grab your popcorn, folks, 'cause we're just getting started on this wild journey. So, after that heart-wrenching chat with Lisa, where she confessed her feelings for Mark, we both decided it was time to hit the brakes on the wedding train. Yeah, you heard me right. We called it off. Now, I won't lie. It was like tearing a piece of my soul out and tossing it into the Grand Canyon, but deep down we both knew it was the right thing to do. Lisa needed to explore this new connection she had with Mark, and I needed to pick up the pieces of my broken heart and move on. It was tough, my friends, like trying to untangle a knot in a giant ball of yarn. We'd invested so much time, energy, and emotion into our relationship, and it felt like we were throwing it all away. But sometimes life throws you curveballs, and you've got to adjust your swing. We had to deal with all the logistics of canceling the wedding, the venue, the invitations, the caterer. It was a logistical nightmare, let me tell you. But we powered through it like two soldiers trying to survive a battlefield of canceled plans and shattered dreams. The worst part was telling our friends and family. They'd been so excited about our wedding, and now we had to break the news that it wasn't happening. The pitying looks, the awkward condolences. It was like attending our own funeral, but we both knew it was the right decision. Lisa needed to see where things would go with Mark, and I needed to figure out who I was without her. It was like hitting the reset button on my life, and it was scary as hell. So there we were, two people who were once inseparable, going our separate ways. It was like the end of an era, the closing credits on a movie I never wanted to end. But life has a funny way of making you reevaluate things, and as painful as it was also a chance to start fresh. I won't lie, the days that followed were some of the loneliest of my life. I'd go to bed at night, and it felt like there was this massive hole in my heart, a void where Lisa used to be. But I knew I had to keep moving forward, one step at a time. And little did I know that this new reality, this fresh start, would lead me down a path I never expected. It was like I was entering a whole new chapter in my life, and I had no idea what twists and turns were waiting for me. So grab your tissues and brace yourselves, my friends, because this story is far from over. So life moved on, and I found myself spending more time with you guys, my trusty group of friends. You know, trying to drown my sorrows in beers, shooting the breeze, and pretending like everything was back to normal. We'd hit up our local joint like it was our second home. And let me tell you, that place had seen its fair share of my post-breakup therapy sessions. So there I was, nursing a cold one and trying to forget about Lisa and the whole wedding disaster. But then, out of the blue, life decided to throw another curveball my way, I swear. It was like the universe had a twisted sense of humor. I was just minding my own business, sipping my brewski when I bumped into this intriguing woman named Sarah. Now Sarah, my friends, was something else. She had this undeniable spark about her, the kind that draws you in like a moth to a flame. We started chatting. Just casual conversation at first. You know, the usual small talk about the weather, sports, and whatnot. But there was something different about the way we connected. It was like we were both speaking a secret language that only we understood. Our banter flowed effortlessly like we'd known each other for ages, even though it was the first time we'd met. As the night went on, we delved into deeper conversations. Dreams, aspirations, and the weird quirks that make us who we are. It was like we were peeling back the layers of our souls, revealing our innermost thoughts and fears. I couldn't help but feel this electric chemistry between us, like we were two magnets irresistibly drawn together. It had been so long since I'd felt that kind of connection, and it was both exhilarating and terrifying at the same time. I couldn't deny it, my friends. I was starting to develop feelings for Sarah, but it was all so complicated. I mean, I'd just come out of a roller coaster of a relationship with Lisa, and now I was on the brink of something new and unexpected. So there I was, caught in this whirlwind of emotions, trying to navigate uncharted waters. It was like I was at a crossroads, and I had to decide whether to follow this intriguing path with Sarah or play it safe and stick to what I knew. But one thing was for sure. That chance encounter with Sarah was about to send my life down a completely different trajectory. Little did I know that this spark, this connection, would lead to a series of events that would make even the wildest roller coaster seem tame. So get ready, my friends, 'cause things are about to get even more interesting. So, remember Sarah, that intriguing woman I met at our local joint? Well, turns out she had her own history with Mark. Yeah, the same Mark that Lisa had fallen for. But here's the kicker. It wasn't what you'd expect. So Sarah and I had been hitting it off, getting closer by the day. And then one evening, as we're sitting at our favorite spot, she drops this bombshell on me. She'd been friends with Mark for years, like way before he even popped up on Lisa's radar. I was like, wait, hold up, rewind. You mean to tell me you know Mark? And Sarah's nodding, like it's no big deal. She starts telling me about their history, how they'd been buddies for ages, and how she'd seen Mark in all his glory, both the good and the bad. But then she hits me with something that I never saw coming. She says, you know Mark's a bit of a player, right? My eyes must have looked like saucers at that point. I mean, I'd had my suspicions about the guy, but to hear it from someone who'd known him for years? That was a whole new level of shock. Sarah spills the beans about Mark's reputation. Turns out he had a long list of conquests, and Lisa was just another name on that list. I couldn't believe it. My girl, the one I thought was head over heels in love with Mark, was just another player in his little game. It was like pieces of the puzzle were finally falling into place. But the picture they painted was not what I expected. Here I was, thinking Mark was some kind of Casanova, and it turns out he was just a smooth-talking heartbreaker. Sarah and I spent hours talking about Mark, dissecting his MO, and sharing stories about his not-so-great track record with women. It was like peeling back the layers of an onion and discovering the rotten core inside. I couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. Relief that I wasn't the only one who'd fallen for his charm, anger at Mark for playing with people's hearts, and disbelief that Lisa had gotten tangled up in all of this. But the biggest surprise of all? Sarah and I grew even closer through this revelation. It was like we were bonding over our shared experience with Mark, and our connection deepened even more. So there you have it, my friends. A surprising twist in the tale. Mark wasn't the Prince Charming I'd imagined, and Lisa's whirlwind romance with him was starting to look like a bad decision. But where did this leave me and Sarah? Well, that's a story for the next chapter, so stay tuned, because things are about to get even more complicated. Things took a dark turn, let me tell you. Lisa, being the smart cookie she was, started putting two and two together. She began digging into Mark's shady past and unraveling the web of deceit he'd spun around her. And guess what? She found evidence of his other relationships, if you can even call them that. Lisa was devastated, heartbroken, and honestly pretty darn angry. I mean, who wouldn't be? She confronted Mark about his deceit, and let's just say it didn't end well for him. Lisa kicked him to the curb faster than you can say player. The dude got what he deserved, but it was still a mess of epic proportions. Now here's where things get even crazier. Lisa, realizing her mistake, tried to reach out to me. She wanted to talk, to apologize, to see if there was any chance of salvaging what we had. But guess what, my friends? By that time, I'd already moved on with Sarah. Yep, I'd taken a leap of faith with Sarah, started a new chapter in my life, and things were going surprisingly well. But when Lisa reached out, It was like a tornado of emotions and drama came crashing down on me. I didn't know what to do, who to choose, where to turn. It was like I was stuck between a rock and a hard place, torn between my past and this newfound connection within the end. I had to make a choice, and I chose to stick with Sarah. I mean, we'd built something special, and I couldn't just throw it all away, right? But it wasn't easy. Breaking the news to Lisa, the girl I'd thought I'd marry, was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And so, my friends, that's how this crazy story comes to a close. Lisa lost everything. The love she thought she found, her once happy life, and her trust in people like Mark. As for me, I found an unexpected love story with Sarah, but it wasn't without its doubts and second guessing. Life can be one heck of a ride, my friends, full of surprises and twists you never see coming. It's a reminder that sometimes the path you end up on is far from the one you planned, and you just have to hold on and enjoy the journey. So here's to unexpected love stories, to life's crazy twists, and to the friends who stick by your side through it all. Welcome back to Find Your Alpha. In this edition, we're going to talk about why women in relationships should not have male friends, including gay men. So, let's get right into it. What are the reasons why women in relationships should not have male friends? Number one, at the top, and this is my opinion because I've never met one that's been any different. Heterosexual men cannot be just friends with women. There's always the motive of getting in a woman's pants. So don't buy this when you have a girlfriend or your wife or whatever and she's quote unquote friends with some guy and claims, hey, it's nothing more than we're just, casual friends. That's a bunch of BS. She may think that initially, although I doubt it, but guarantee in that guy's mind, he's looking at some point to try to get in her drawers. Guaranteed. Number two, homosexual men could be long-term closet bisexual or bicurious. And we're going to go through a story today that's really going to illustrate this firsthand. So, even homosexual men, which a lot of times, a lot of guys are okay with their girlfriends or wives having friends who are, homosexual men. This story is going to open your eyes and you're going to think otherwise. And then number three, women who insist on keeping these friendships active have ulterior motives. And those motives, in my opinion, means that they are looking to have an affair. Facts. Many alpha widows. Now, these are women who've had relationships in the past with alpha males and they've never really gotten over them. Many alpha widows try to keep active friendships with their exes. The reason they do that, again, is so that they can always have that ex potentially to fall back on should things not work out with you, or if they need a little spice in their relationship because you're not delivering it or they're just bored with you, they'll have those exes to lean on. So that is a no-go. Women will utilize these friendships, in quotation marks, to monkey branch from your relationship should things go south for you. Now, we all know what monkey branching is, and as it pertains to women, a lot of women will keep men in their orbit or in their, let's say, Facebook friends or on their Instagram, and maybe they'll communicate with them every once in a while, and they'll have a relationship going. That's what monkey branching is. See, they're starting this relationship while they're still in a relationship with you, but they're never going to let go of you until they got something solid on the other side. And this monkey branching oftentimes leads to, and most of the time from what I gather, leads to an affair. So just beware these friends are going to be there in the event that, hey, she gets bored with you, she needs to spice things up, or she's done with you. She'll monkey branch right over to them, forget about you, that you even existed. The third one, social media male friendships are just as dangerous. In my opinion today, they are even more dangerous because they can do them on the down low. More dangerous than even a traditional friendship because, women can be on Facebook, they can have all these friends, they could be direct messaging them through Facebook or Instagram or any of these other platforms, and you may not even know what's going on. Or they could set up a dating profile and they could be, messaging back and forth with some dude. And of course, they set the profile up under a different name, under a different city, or what have you. But they're still out there having this emotional online affair with some guys. Actions to take before committing to a woman in a relationship. Now, this is as it pertains to these male friends. When entering into an exclusive relationship with a woman, an alpha male must clearly lay down the law that any and all relationships with male friends must end immediately, including such relationships on social media, making it clear that any violations could result in the abrupt and permanent ending of your committed relationship. Now, that should also go for you as a male. If you're really serious about a woman, and let's say you have quote unquote girlfriends, which again, that's not possible. Heterosexual men cannot just have girls who are friends. I'm not talking about people in your office that you're working with in a business setting. You can be friendly with them. I'm talking about taking it to the next level and having one-on-one meetings with them outside the office. Coffee, drinks, going to movies, things like that. That's a no-go, a no-go. So you must lay down the law before getting into relationships, saying that all such friendships must end and end immediately. And if your girlfriend, brings up all these, roadblocks and say, oh no, I can't do that, this and that, my advice would be drop her like a rock and move on. All right, now it's time for a story. And the title of this story is, You'll See. My fiancé had a one-night stand with our gay male, and he puts here, in quotations, friend. So let's get into it. This situation happened a month ago, and I'm still dealing with the fallout. My fiancé Jan, age 27, and I, Joe, age 28, have known each other since junior high and have been in a committed relationship for the past 4 years. And on Valentine's Day 2022, so just 3 months ago, I proposed to her and she accepted. Since our engagement, we continued living separately, smart, but planned to begin cohabitating a few months before our wedding. We've had our share of arguments over the years, but have always successfully resolved our issues without damaging our relationship. The only major concern I've had with her is that she still likes to go out with her girlfriends. That's a big red flag right there. Big red flag, and she drinks. And when she does drink, she tends to drink too much. That's a huge red flag. That's a deal breaker, as far as I'm concerned. And he goes on to say, though, she had gotten better at this during the past year until the incident, which I will next describe. In addition to her girlfriends, my fiancé has a gay male friend. Let's call him Scott. I also considered Scott, as you see. He put ed on there, so past tense, a friend of mine, as we've all known each other since high school. Though I'm not a good judge of a guy's looks, everyone thinks Scott is very handsome and women describe him as a Ken doll. Scott is very muscular and dresses in the latest male fashion. You would never suspect he is gay until he speaks. When he does so, he has a very feminine voice, is very flamboyant, and has a constant loud and somewhat repulsive laugh. He loves hanging out with my fiancée and her friends and talking about the men they are in relationships with. He considers himself one of the girls. Scott had been in a relationship with an older guy named Paolo for the past 9 months, and they just had a very emotional breakup about 30 days ago. The first person he called after the breakup was my fiancé. He was very emotional and crying uncontrollably. Jan, excuse me, stayed on the phone for hours that night with her consoling him. Eventually, she said she wanted to go over to see him and asked if I would go with her. I told her I didn't want to as I had to get up early, but she could go if she wanted. About an hour later, at 10:30 p.m., she left my apartment for Scott's house and said she would just go home from there and call me after she leaves his house to give me an update. I was fine with this arrangement, so we kissed and she departed. Several hours went by, and it was now 1:30 a.m. and I hadn't heard from January. I thought she just forgot to call me, so I went to bed and knew she would call me in the morning. Then, now this is where things take a big turn here. Then, about 3 a.m., I got a call from Scott, who was crying hysterically, highly inebriated, and mumbling a bunch of words I could not decipher. I told him to slow down and speak clearly, and with this he said, "Joe, I had sex with Jan tonight, and I'm so sorry. It's not her fault. It's all my fault. It's my fault." Needless to say, I was stunned and shocked and thought I may have misunderstood, so I asked him to repeat this. He started crying again and repeated back exactly what I thought I heard. Again, he started saying it's not her fault and that he's gay and that he didn't want this to impact our relationship as he has no romantic feelings for Jan. With this, I became filled with rage and said, "Scott, stop crying and I want you to tell me everything that happened." He again started crying and screaming and saying he didn't want to. I told him, "Scott, you tell me the truth or I will never speak to you again." So he proceeded to outline what went down. He's going to give him all the gory details here. He said that he had been drinking all night, and when Jan arrived, she had a drink with him and then proceeded to have 3 to 4 more as they continued talking past midnight. So going back to what we were talking about before, this girl obviously has an alcohol problem. Here she is drinking, what, 4 to 5 drinks in a matter of a few hours? So this girl, she's definitely got a major problem. He said during the conversation, he said to Jan, he should just become a heterosexual man so he doesn't have to deal with men anymore. He said with this, now listen to this guys, Jan told him she'd like to take his V card if he was serious. He said he wasn't, but said Jan sat beside him and placed her hand on his crotch and started rubbing. He said she proceeded from there giving him a brief episode of oral and then taking her clothes off, then undressing him where they next had intercourse. I was stunned beyond belief. I can just imagine. Just unbelievable. Although, again, this woman has a history of being, a drinker, a partier, and very questionable in those 2 areas. So again, shouldn't have male friends, so nothing here really surprises me. I was stunned beyond belief, angry and sick. I said to Scott, "Are you bullshitting me?" He said he wasn't, and again began crying hysterically saying it meant nothing, and that he's still gay and both Jan, and he regretted their actions. I'm sure he did, but I don't know so much about her. He said he wanted to call me to confess as he considered me one of his best friends and couldn't keep a secret from me. He said he hoped that I would just forget about this, not bring this up to Jan, and we could all go on as friends like it never happened. No, yeah, like that's gonna happen. I mean, this guy just wants him to, hey, I'm telling you this, but don't bring it up to your fiance, and just forget about it. I'm gay. I'm not interested in her. Just, sweep this under the rug. I was dumbfounded and asked him to hold on while I put him on mute to think about it, to think about what I was going to do. So he put him on mute to get some silence here to think about, what he was going to do next. He then got the idea, or I then got the idea, to do a 3-way call with Scott and January. Boy, this is going to be interesting. I would keep Scott on hold, call Jan, and just ask her how the night went with Scott, and see what she said. I unmuted Scott and told him to continue to hold as I was still thinking about what he just told me. He said, okay. With that, I called January. She quickly answered and groggily said, "Hi, baby. I miss you." I said I hadn't heard from her and wanted to make sure she had made it home okay. She said, "Oh no, I forgot to call you. I'm so sorry." I then said, "You sound drunk. Have you been drinking?" She said no, but then said she did have one drink with Scott but didn't finish it. So not only is she a drinker, but she's also, of course, a liar. I then asked her how Scott was. She said he was doing much better since he and I had a chance to talk things over, and she thinks he's going to be all right. With this, I confidence in Scott. I then said, Scott, are you there? And he replied that he was. I said, Jan, are you there? And there was dead silence on the other end. I said again, Jan, are you there? And she eventually said yes. With this, Scott began crying and again saying how sorry he was for what happened. Jan was silent. I said, Jan, what do you have to say? She said, I don't know what you guys are talking about. With this, Scott said, Jan, I told Joe everything that happened. Just be honest. With this, Jan said, what the F are you talking about, Scott? Scott then said, I told Joe. Even though we had sex, I'm still gay, and we have no feelings for each other, and that you love him with all your heart. Jan said, Scott, you MFer, what the hell are you talking about? This back and forth went on for several minutes until I cut it off saying I was going to hang up and we'd all talk in the morning. With this, Jan said nothing, or Jan said, excuse me, don't hang up. I said, I was, and that we'd talk in the morning. She said, I'm coming over now. I said, don't do it as you are drunk, and I will call the cops on you if you drink and drive. With this, I again said, I'll call you in the morning, and hung up. I spent the rest of the night just thinking through what I heard and what I was going to do. So this is already late in the morning because he said when Scott called him it was 3 o'clock, so we're probably talking now 4 o'clock. The morning came and at 7:15 a.m. I had someone banging on my apartment door. I was in the shower, so I quickly dried off and got on a pair of shorts and a t-shirt and opened the door. It was Scott. His face was deeply scratched in several places, and his bottom lip had a wide gash in it. He said, Is Jan here? I said, No. What happened to you? He then said Jan came to his house, and she screamed at him and proceeded to beat him with her fists, scratch his face and eyes, and throw drinking glasses at him, one of which split his lip and cracked one of his front teeth. So also, not only is this woman a drinker, she's a liar and she's also abusive, physically abusive, as you see here. I then told Scott to sit down and had him repeat to me exactly what happened between he and Jan last night, which he did saying word for word what he previously told me. So now that he's sobered up, his story hasn't changed. With this, there was a knock at the door. I looked out the peephole and saw it was January. I opened the door and said, Scott, get up. With that, I got my keys and said, let's go talk about this on one of the picnic benches in the grass in front of my apartment building. I wanted them out of my apartment in full view of our building, as I knew it would be difficult to get them to leave when I kicked them out. So he's basically taking them away from his apartment, so he doesn't have to deal with kicking them out. He's taking them outside to talk to them on a picnic bench. The three of us then walked in silence, not saying a word. When we arrived at the benches, I first pointed to Scott's face and said, Jan, did you do this? She said, yes, I did, because he's lying. I love you, Joe, and would never do this to you. I said, Jan, are you sure about that? Quickly thinking on my feet, I said, Scott has given me something proving otherwise, which he hadn't. So apparently this guy basically thought on his feet and said, hey, Scott's given me some concrete evidence here that prove otherwise, but he hadn't done that. He's just bullshitting her. And he goes on to say, are you sure you want to continue to lie knowing what I know? She started crying and said she got drunk and Scott took advantage of her. Scott spoke up and said that he didn't, and he started crying. So you got both of these emotional wrecks here, in your life that are, causing a lot of havoc. Both of them crying, uncontrollably here. With this, she lurched back and slapped him full force across the face. The force was so hard his head nearly did a 180. I separated them and said, I have something to say to both of you, and I want you both to listen without speaking. I simply said, Jan, I believe Scott 100%. Effective immediately, our engagement and our relationship is over. She started crying, yelling, why? Because I got drunk and had sex with a gay man. So now she's rationalizing this because, this Scott was gay. She's saying, "You're going to leave me because, I got drunk and had sex with another man who is gay." He said nothing, which was smart. I then looked at Scott and said, "Scott, our friendship is over. I never want to speak or see you again." With that, he started crying hysterically. I then said, "I'm going to walk back to my apartment, and I don't want either of you to follow me. If you do, I will call the police and file a restraining order." With this, they both started sobbing louder. As I walked away, Jan ran to me and put her arms around me, and I just pushed her away. I said, "Jan, stop it or I will call the police. Don't make a scene." With this, she ran to her car and peeled out of the parking lot, running to the stoplight at the end of the street. Scott then walked to his car crying and drove away. Since this time, I've not spoken to either of them, but they both texted nonstop and left me numerous voicemail messages saying how sorry they were and that it all meant nothing and let's get back to the way things were. Yeah, like you're just gonna forget it. Just forget everything, sweep it under the rug. Let's get married, go forward, like this never happened. Come on, get real. I didn't respond to any of them. Additionally, Jan and Scott have both came separately to my apartment and banged on the door. I never opened and sent them messages saying to get out of here, and if they didn't, I would call the police and file a restraining order. So I like the way this guy handled this. I mean, first of all, he shouldn't have been with this woman in the first place for all those reasons I talked about before, but once he found out about this cheating episode, he immediately cut it off. He handled it like an alpha. He handled it like a boss, so I give him credit for that. I've since notified our families and told them that we had broken up due to Jan's infidelity and explained what happened. So, it's another smart thing he did here. So she can't spin a story. He called both of their families, his family and hers, and explained to them what happened. My parents were relieved as they never liked or trusted January. So, oftentimes you have parents that don't like, someone's boyfriend or girlfriend, and sometimes it's all for nothing. They're just, no one's ever good enough for their child. But if there's true reasons, if you ask them, "Why don't you like her?" And they can give you specifics. Like, I'm sure they probably didn't like this girl's personality. Maybe didn't like her drinking or seeing her in action when she's been drinking. And those are things that you should take very seriously and listen to your parents. That's where things stand. In a flash, I lost my fiancé and a good friend. I'm heartbroken and emotionally damaged by this experience. As a result, I'm going to abstain from women for the foreseeable future until I feel I can trust again. One silver lining, I'm so glad this happened before we moved in together and definitely before we got married, or I'd have a much bigger mess to deal with. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so that's the story. Here are the key takeaways. Going back to where I started, women in committed relationships should not be partying with her friends. Let's start right there. There should no be any more of these. There should not be, I should say, any more of these girls' nights out or party nights with the girlfriends. No, those things always eventually lead to bad things. Bad things, meaning extramarital or extra relationship affairs. People who have the next point here, people who have alcohol or substance abuse issues are not relationship material. They need to get professional help. You cannot save them. Oftentimes, and I've seen it firsthand with friends and family, they'll get involved with somebody with a substance abuse or an alcohol abuse problem. They think, hey, being with me is going to change this person. It's not. They need to get the help that they need to clean themselves up. Then potentially you could have a relationship with them, but you don't want to get involved with these people when they're actively involved in alcohol or drugs in any manner. Then finally, before entering a committed relationship, Your woman must end all private meetings and communications with her single male friends, including any gay friends. I've got the word friends here in quotations because, again, males, specifically heterosexual males, cannot be just friends with heterosexual women. If not, there's a high probability this will lead to trouble at some point during your relationship. I can almost guarantee it is going to end in something that you're not going to like, namely affairs. That's the video for today. If you like this story, please share it and subscribe to the channel. We're trying to grow the Find Your Alpha community. Let me know in the comments how you think this guy handled this situation. I think he did a good job. I think the only mistake this guy made was, getting involved with this woman, knowing that she was still a party girl, knowing that she was a heavy drinker and she got sloshed when she drinks. I think that's where he messed up in a big, big way. I can't fathom why this guy thought she was marriage material. There's no way someone like that could ever be marriage material. But I think once he found out about this cheating situation and the way he handled it from there, cutting off both her and Scott, the gay friend of theirs, I think was the appropriate thing to do. Just cut it off. Don't have any more conversations. There's nothing to talk about. The crime has been committed. You can't go back and undo the crime, okay? It's been done. So end it and move forward. So thank you for joining me on this video, and I hope you are enjoying these videos here on the Find Your Alpha channel, and I'll